Levels are one of the primary organizational and structural constructs in your Revit projects. They help determine where all the important heights are in your building. They can be in the positive or the negative direction, and they determine the important values in that Z direction. So it's very common to have a level at each story of the building. So I always tell people if there's a button on your elevator, you ought to have a level there. We can also use levels for other purposes as well, just any important Z height that you want to establish in your building, whether it's the bottom of your foundation or the top of an eave condition or a parapet height or something like that. So in this movie, we're going to go ahead and set up the levels in our project. I'm in a simple file that's based on the default metric template, and you can't actually work with the levels in a floor plan view. You have to actually go to a vertical view like an elevation or a section. So our default template included several elevation views, and I'm going to open up one of those. I'm going to open up the south elevation. And what you'll see is in this default template, there's simply two levels. There's a level 1 at 0 and a level 2 at 4,000 millimeters. When we click on either one of these levels, there's going to be a variety of small handles and controls that appear on both ends of the level. So let's look at a few of those first before we start adding and manipulating any of these levels. There's a little open circle at each end of the level. If you drag with that open circle, it will actually change the extents of the level. Now notice that it also changes the extents of the other levels as well, and that's indicated by this small lock icon right here. That lock icon actually locks the two endpoints together, so if I drag one, they all drag together. Now in a really tall building where you have lots of levels, that's going to be really handy in helping you keep all of the levels neat and organized and lined up with one another. There's also a little check box over here, which is currently unchecked, versus the one on the right-hand side, which is checked. If you check the box, it displays the level annotation with its name and its height, and if you uncheck the box, it will hide that annotation. There's also a small little squiggle grip right here, which allows you to add an elbow, and that will actually shift the annotation away from the height of the level. Now, in this case, I'm going to just drag this back up to parallel, and it will remove that elbow, but in a few moments, we'll see an example where that could come in handy. So those are the different controls that we have. Now, it's also possible to change the height of an existing level. This is going to be the first floor of my building. It's going to be a 2-story building, so I do want to keep level 1 and level 2, but my level 2 is currently a little bit taller than I'd like it to be. So instead of 4,000 millimeters, I'm going to change that to 3,000. Now, I could do that with the dimension right here or with the value right here. You just simply click on the number and then type in the value you want. So I'll type in 3,000 and notice that that moves the level down. So now I've taken the two existing levels and configured those the way I want. Now it's time to add some additional levels. I'm going to actually add several. I'm going to add a level below level 1 that's going to represent the grade that the building sits on. And then I'm going to add 2 roof levels, a low roof and a high roof, because our building is actually going to have 2 roof conditions. So to do that, we're going to go to the Architecture tab. And here on the Datum panel, I'm going to click the Level button. Now, the keyboard shortcut for level is LL. So if you prefer, you can use that instead. Now, if I accept all the defaults, what you'll notice is I'm in this kind of draw mode. And when we look at the draw panel, it's an icon that lets me draw as a line. So basically, if I click 2 points on screen, it would create a level at whatever height that I first clicked. Notice that the level is always going to be parallel to the others. So levels have to be parallel to the ground plane. They're always in the Z direction, so you can't draw a level at an angle. If you look carefully at the level head on the right-hand side, you'll notice that it's currently black. Now compare that to the 2 level heads that were already here, which are currently blue. Now we talked about this in a previous movie, that blue color kind of indicates that that's an interactive feature, that we can actually use that level head to access the floor plan that's associated with those levels. Notice that if I come over here and I click the Modify tool or press double escape to cancel out of the command, it actually turns that level head blue as well. So the default behavior of the levels is to create floor plans that go along with the levels. Now, if we look at my project browser, you're going to notice that because of my version of Revit, I'm in the full suite version of Revit, I got actually 3 new floor plans. I got a level 3 floor plan here, a level 3 ceiling plan here, and I actually got a level 3 structural plan. Now, you're not required to have all 3 of these plans. You can add and remove floor plans anytime that you like. But I just wanted to point out that the default behavior is giving me all 3. Now, you can easily remove ones you don't want by just simply selecting and pressing the delete key. Now, in this case, if I delete the structural plan, it would actually remove that category as well, because that was the last plan in that category or the last plan in that branch of the browser. So all of these branches of the browsers actually react to the views that are within them. And if you delete all of the views, then the branch goes away as well. Now, the other thing is I kind of place this somewhat randomly. If I want to make it line up with the others, all I have to do is click these grips and drag them at the end. And notice what happens. The minute I snap it to the endpoint of the others, it automatically locks. And now these would all stretch together again. And I could do the same thing on this end. Drag it till it snaps. They would lock together. And now all of these ends are locked together. And like we did a moment ago, I can actually change the height as well. Now my low roof is actually going to be at 3,800 millimeters. So I'm going to move it down there. Now notice when I do that, it gets awfully close to and is partially covering up level 2. So what I can actually do now is I can click on level 2. There's that little squiggly grip there. I can click it and then use these control grips here to adjust that so it's more legible. Notice that the level line is still at 3,000. I've just created a jog there to move the annotation out of the way so that it's more legible. Now, the last thing that I want to do with this level is I'm going to select it and then click right on its name. So just like I was able to edit the height of the level by clicking on the temporary dimension, I'm able to change the name in the same way. And I can type in the name that I want this to have. Now, when I press enter on my keyboard, watch what's going to happen. It's going to display a dialog asking me if it's okay to also rename the corresponding views. Now, I pointed those out to you a moment ago over here. We have a level 3 view on the floor plan, and we have a level 3 view for the ceiling plan. So if I answer yes here, both of those level 3 views change to below roof. And at this point, I look at that and I say, well, it would be kind of silly to actually have a ceiling plan for the roof. So I probably want to delete that and just keep the 2 default ceiling plans, level 1 and level 2. Now let's repeat the process, but this time I want to show you how you can determine ahead of time which floor plans it's going to create. So I'm going to go back to level, and notice here on the options bar, there's a checkbox that says make plan view. And then right next to that, there's this button that says plan view types. And if I click that, you're going to see all 3 plan view types are highlighted, and this is why I got all 3. So if I actually click on ceiling plan and click on structural plan, it will deselect those 2. And now when I click OK here and draw my next level, it will only create a floor plan, which is probably more appropriate for the high roof. We don't really need a ceiling plan or a structural plan for that at the moment. So I'm going to come over here, and you can actually get this thing to line up before you click, and it will save you the step of having to snap it later. So you can also follow the temporary dimensions here, and if you use them, you can actually get it set to the correct height ahead of time if you like. I'm going to start it right about 2,200 millimeters, and I'm going to pull this across until it snaps at both ends, and you can see that creates that new level at 6,000. Then I'm going to click right on the name, type in high roof, press enter, and again, when it asks me if I want to rename, I'll click yes. And this time, because there was only one view, it only renamed the high roof view. Now, one last thing I want to point out is you don't have to click point to point. You can actually use this tool here instead, this pick lines tool, and I actually like doing it this way. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put in 150 millimeters in the offset field on the options bar. Now, when you use the pick option, it's usually a pretty good idea to do that in conjunction with an offset. I want to click my plan view types and make sure that floor plan is still selected. It will remember, but I just wanted to verify that. Then I'm going to come over here and highlight level 1. Now, if you can't see what's going on, go ahead and roll the wheel in a little bit so you can get a little closer. And you see how if you move slightly, you can get that dashed line to go either above or below level 1. When it's below level 1, I want to click. And the way the pick lines work is it will create an offset copy of that level at whatever distance away you set in the offset field here. I'm going to come over here to the modify tool and click it to cancel out of the command. I'll select this new level 5, add an elbow, come over here and drag these until they snap to the one up above, click right in the name, and call that grade. When I get the message, I'll go ahead and rename the corresponding view and accept that. Now, if it turns out that you don't actually need a grade level floor plan, you could actually delete it And notice that the symbol will turn black here to indicate that there's no longer an associated floor plan. This level is now simply just a datum. So that's entirely up to you whether you want to have a floor plan there or not. It's not required to have any floor plans for levels at all. So the main purpose of the levels is they establish those Z heights in your building. You need to create them in either an elevation or a section view, but you can manipulate the different heights of each of the levels. You can change their names. They can even have corresponding floor plans, which you can access from those levels and rename along with them. The levels are one of the primary datum elements within your project and one of the first things you're going to want to set up when you get started on a new project.